So today, kind of the purpose is that we're gonna talk about what the expectations are in a high school class so that you are aware of how you will be graded, how things will be communicated with you, and also just what my expectations are for you as a student. First thing I wanna make sure that we all do, because we are still missing a few people. So I'm gonna go back and share my screen. Now, when I share my screen, I've never had to change tabs before in here. Can you still see things when I, like, let's say I move to this tab? Can you now see a slide deck instead?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, sorry, I have people trying to get in at the same time. So if I go to my Google Classroom, you all have a new invite. So you all should have an invitation to this Google Classroom, which is Algebra 1, 8th grade. The former Google Classroom was just for the review work leading up to our pretest. Any of our work will be posted in here. And I just kind of wanted, so first things first, in order to do the work for today, you have to accept that invite, or you can see there's a class code here. So if somehow the invite got lost in your inbox, you want to use the class code to join. You absolutely have to do that in order to do the work for the rest of this week even. And this is going to be, so the review was not technically a class. It was reviewing until we were ready to take our pre-assessment, and now class is beginning. So the way that Google Classroom is going to operate and the way that you'll start seeing things will look different than how it looked in the review. So I'm just going to show you, this is like the back end of Google Classroom, so you're going to see everything that's in there right now. But we're starting today, so you'll see, I go view more, there will be a slide deck that was just posted today. Once this meeting started, I made sure that the slide deck was in there. But what you will see in terms of things that you need to submit to me, anything that I need from you to get turned in will be listed as a separate assignment. So that's different than how the review was set up, where it was just kind of in the slide deck and you went to the slide deck, you completed it, and maybe there was a Google form to submit. So tomorrow, when this first homework is released, you want to make sure that you are submitting in Google Classroom, okay? That's where everything needs to be. So if you email me a picture of your work or something like that, I'm going to email you back and say, I really need it in Google Classroom. That's just so I have everything in one place and I can easily find it if I need to later on, okay? Same thing with any checkouts will be in here. And also notes videos. So this will tell me, there'll still be ed puzzles, but it'll tell you, first of all, if you haven't watched one of the notes, and it'll tell me also if you haven't watched one of the notes, and it'll also alert me when you watch it later. So it's important, I didn't even put the videos in the slide deck so that you click on it from here so that I can get those alerts when you go in and watch a video. Okay, so it's gonna look a lot different. You're gonna get a lot of more emails from Google Classroom letting you know something is due, and that's where you wanna be submitting your work. I do wanna say just kind of a little bit my piece on what I was seeing. So John, I'll talk about the packets in a minute because I'll do that in a little bit. What I was seeing in the work that was being turned in over the review is some of the files that were coming to me, they were really clear and really easy to see, and I appreciated those files very much. There's a few things that probably help that, like having a really sharp pencil, making sure the light is on in the room so that it's not really gray on the paper. Some of the work that was being submitted was really, really hard to see. Holding up the paper kind of next to your Chromebook, it's not ideal. And if you are going to do that, at least crop it in so it's just the paper, because when it's like a whole room and a body and then a paper, that paper's really small on my side. So if it's small and the pencil's dull and the lighting's not good, I can't see any of it. And so you don't want to have me constantly prompting you to resubmit things if I can't see it. So take the time to snap a good photo of your homework or checkouts and kind of give them a, your own edit before submitting. Also, again, if you have a phone or an iPad, you can scan notes, and that's always the crispest. Like, I can see everything when it's scanned, and I can see everything perfectly. So if you can do that, that's great. That would be my number one suggestion. Another thing that was happening during the review is sometimes the format was off with the checkouts. So for example, on the worksheet, it would be like 1, 2, 3, 4. But when you did your work, you were going 1, 2, then 3, 4. And so it was taking me a while to grade because things weren't lined up the way everyone else's page was lined up. So to remedy that, I've given you templates for all of your checkouts. So if you are in person in school in one of the cohort groups, you should have received packets, which again, we'll talk about a little bit more later. And you'll notice in those packets, there are checkouts, but there are no problems written on the checkouts. Okay, and that's because I want to wait until that day for you to even see those problems and work through it. But you'll have kind of the grid template so that you can fill things in exactly how it looks on your computer screen, so that I never kind of misgrade you by having a problem in the wrong spot. Okay. So my very first thing to you today is you have to go in and accept that classroom invite to be able to do the work that you'll be assigned. Okay. You also, so I'm going to go to the slide deck. So you received this slide deck today for the first week of class. Let me, hold on, I have to, do I have to change or can you still see it? You can't anymore. You can see that now, right?
Yep.
Okay. So you all, this was just released to Classroom. So if you've accepted the Classroom invite, you should have gotten an alert that this was released. If you haven't yet, then you need to go in and do that. So I want to point out a few things in this slide deck. First of all, this bulletin board will be an every week slide deck. So if you need to reprint a homework or you need a new copy of notes, whatever it may be, you can click on these links and it'll bring you to those documents and you can print whatever you need, okay? Also, the Zoom link's always in here. So why don't I real quick talk about those packets? So if you were in the building the last few days, you should have received, first of all, this notes packet, okay? So it will go through, the way that I have it set up is each of the video lessons that you watch, I'm using the same notes that I have provided you with. So they're guided notes to take notes along with me. The homeworks, you also get a packet, separate packet of the homeworks. You also get a separate packet of any of the warm-ups you'll see in there and any of the checkouts that you'll see. I believe that at EMS, there was kind of a little bit of an error and some students started the packets and the work when it was handed out to you. So you shouldn't have, like, there should be no pencil marks on these packets right now at all. So if you have started them in any way, my suggestion to you would be to reprint the packets the next time you are in the building, okay? Because I want you to have the correct materials and I want you to kind of follow along with the entire class. So the other thing that I will say is part of the reason that videos aren't posted early is because I don't want you going too far ahead and then maybe getting confused in terms of where the whole group is at. Okay, so you should be really trying to stay on the day that we are on. Don't fill in any of those packets early. Wait, because there may be, I may add something in or take something out or adjust things as we go. Okay, so I want you to stay with me. So again, if you were part of that group that kind of like started it because you didn't know not to start it, you may want to ask that a new packet be printed for you. If you didn't do too much work in it, then you might be able to kind of work around it. But certainly take the time to go back through and fill in things the way that the class is filling in things, okay? And then same thing, you can get the homework here as well. So After that, you'll get kind of just a shortened calendar. So you'll notice on the notes packet, there's a calendar of the whole unit, just so you can kind of get an overview of when larger assessments are and kind of what it is that we're going to talk about throughout the unit. But this is the first week, so it's today through next Wednesday. And then each day, what you'll see is a list of things to do. So on Wednesdays, it'll be all of you that are Zooming. So it says all students. First thing you want to make sure you do today, if you haven't already, is look at the invite for Google Classroom and accept that. Next thing we're going to do is talk about these course expectations. But I think it would be beneficial to you to also look over these course expectations on your own afterwards, after you've had like some time to digest the meeting from this morning. And once you're feeling like you understand what the expectations are, then you just want to sign this consent form saying, you know, I understand how grading works at the high school. I understand what's expected of me in terms of late work and passing things in on time. And I kind of know what my grade will be made up of, okay? So we're going to come back to this slide, but just to kind of show you going through, you are Zooming on the days that you are home. So that means that tomorrow, when we do our first, you know, real class Zoom session, that will be the A group. It says A and remote. I ended up putting, and I need to meet with the remote kids separately. I ended up putting all of the remote kids in the B group in terms of in terms of attendance. So how do I get back? So I'll talk separately to the remote kids about that. Certainly if you are a remote student, it doesn't, you could Zoom in, I guess, every single day if you want to, but I have assigned you to the B group. Okay, so unless you missed class at some point or you need assistance with something, you should plan on joining the B group. What I will do is every day after we meet, I'll put a recording of our meeting so that if there's something that you are getting stuck on at class that day when you're in school, that evening you could go back and find hopefully the answers to that. And what our Zooms will look like is you will have watched a video the day before. So that speaks right away to one of the expectations. You can't show up to class without doing the homework the night before because you won't be prepared for the work we're going to do. Okay, so you absolutely have to stay on track and each night watch the video to prepare you for the next day. In particular, if you are in a Zoom group the next day, because you will not be ready if you haven't, okay? And then when we Zoom, we'll start with a warm-up. And then we'll actually, tomorrow's a little different because we don't have homework to review from the class before. Let me go to Friday just to show you. So the group I'm Zooming in will do a warm-up. We'll practice the skills that were in the video from the day before. We will go over the homework. So I'll give you a chance to ask any questions from the day before, and I'll go over those with the group again that's Zooming. And then we'll start to look at some of the work for that day. So if we have time, we can do some of the more, you know, challenging problems on the homework for that night in the Zoom group together as like a little mini lesson. Or at times you'll have checkouts that you'll be working on that I'll let you go and get started on instead of staying in Zoom. So, 1 minute. Addison, I'm going to take off your chatting. I'm not sure what's happening there. Okay, so that's kind of a rundown of what you will see in the slide deck. So there's kind of two important pieces. There's the slide deck for each week. Absolutely, you should leave it open. You visit it every single day to make sure you've done every single thing on that to do. Because things like the warm-up and checking your homework, that's not going to post into Google Classroom. That's the work you're doing when you're not Zooming with me in school. And you'll see, I haven't entered them in yet because I don't want people to get too far ahead. But you'll see I put the keys in there. So when you're at school and you're not Zooming with me, you open the warm-up, you complete it, you check the key. And then after that, you go ahead and you open the key and you check your homework from the night before. And then if I'm in the building, I'm gonna start the next homework because I've watched the video the night before to prepare myself for this work, okay? And then after step 3, the step 4 and 5, that's like what you're doing that night, okay? So the beginning part of the to-do is like try to get as much done as possible at school at this beginning part of this list. And then that night you'll watch a video. Because this is a Friday, I gave you a little bit of homework for over the weekend. Typically it'll just be watching a video to get ready to then again, go back to step 1 and do some work on that video the next day, either over Zoom or in school. So I'm gonna stop for a minute and see if there's any questions right now. You can throw them into the chat box. I did see one about the pre-assessment. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. Okay. So.
I don't know if this is for everyone, but I can't talk.
Yeah. You can't what?
I can't type in the chat.
You disabled the chat.
Yeah.
You disabled it.
For everyone? I thought I only did for one person, sorry.
No.
There you go. So now I'll give you a minute. If you have questions on kind of expectations, what the class is going to run like in classroom. So the packets are only homework. So there are 3 packets you should have received. One packet is notes. Okay, so the notes packet is for when you are watching the videos. Okay, so when you watch the videos, you will fill in the notes as you see them on the video. Okay. Then there's a homework packet. You'll be doing that either with me over Zoom or in the school building that you are in, okay? Then there's a third packet, and that has hard copies of any of the warm-ups or checkouts that you'll be asked to do, okay? So those are the 3 packets you should have received. Okay, do we Zoom over the weekends? No, we do not. I plan to take my weekends. We do not Zoom over the weekends. So you'll Zoom 3 times a week, the 2 days you're home and then Wednesday. What will we do during algebra class when we're in school? So when you are in school, you will have a warm-up to do, and then you'll have a homework to do, and then you may have time to start the video lesson for that night, okay? So when you're in school, you'll basically be doing work. The benefit of doing that when you're in school on the days you can't Zoom is there are other people working on the same work. So, and you'll all be in your own classroom. So certainly for warm-ups and homeworks, you could work collaboratively or kind of bounce questions off each other as you're working through it. And again, you should only be doing the work I ask you to do that day. So don't get ahead. If you have extra time, start the video for that night. You can always return to the video later if you don't have enough time to finish it. Are we getting the results from the pre-assessment? I'm going to wait on that because we're going to talk about grading in a minute. There's a lot of those. Will we get access to PowerSchool to see our grade? Yes, you should. I emailed our head of guidance this morning actually because I still don't have a roster in PowerSchool yet. I know it's something that they're working on. There's a little bit of a it's difficult when the students aren't listed as Essex High School students, so they're working on that right now. And then yes, you should have an account. And I know a lot of the students at the high school put an app on their phone, a PowerSchool app, and it'll give them alerts when their grade's been updated. So that's something you may want to do. So lots of questions about the pre-assessment. So let me go. I'm going to get up the next part here. Are the Zooms always going to be at 8? They are, which means on your remote days, you need to be up at 8 a.m. for class. So I'm going to do 2 things now. First thing I'm going to do while I'm loading up the next part is I need you to fill out attendance for today. So I'm going to give you a link. It's a Google form, which I think from what I've heard in the past, you may need to copy and paste. Make sure you put the last name where the last name says and the first name where the first name says in the form. I will always record and post meetings unless you know, sometimes maybe a meeting is going to be short, or sometimes on test days, it won't benefit the people who aren't there, basically. So if that's the case, then I won't post it, but for the most part, yes, I will try to record all the meetings and post them later. Okay, so I put a Google form in there. Fill that out real quick while I load up the next piece. Don't see the form. Oh, I only sent it to James. Promise I'll get better at this. All right, here you go. There's your form. Let me try again, just, yeah. No, it's in there, okay. Do you want us to join PowerSchool, or do you, I'll wait on answering that, John, because I'm sure the head of guidance will let me know if it may auto-generate just information for you to sign up. If not, then I'll let you know how you create a student account. But right now, since you're not in there, I don't think you'll be able to just create an account right now. I would wait and see what happens. Okay, so work on filling out that Google form. I'm gonna give you a minute and I'm gonna share my screen again. We're gonna go over some course expectations. Okay, so you will see, Omar can't get into the form. Can other people get into the form?
Yes.
I think you have to be logged into your EWSD account. Oh, PowerSchool. Got it. Yeah, PowerSchool won't let you in yet because you're not in the system yet. Okay. So this is the first kind of task today after accepting your Google Classroom invite. Is I want you to look back over this and probably share it with parent guardian at home, just so that they're also in the loop in terms of what this course will look like in terms of expectations for you. So on the first page, it's more of a general, talks about topics we're going to cover. I will say that the first half of the class is, I think, a lot different than the second half of the class. So the first half, it may feel for some of you really familiar. The first half of the class is a lot of linear stuff, linear equations still, and we talk about systems of linear equations, things, slope-intercept form, things that you also do in 8th grade math a lot of times. So those things are going to feel familiar. The second half of the course gets to nonlinear stuff. Exponents, polynomials, simplifying radicals, quadratic functions, exponential functions, modeling of these functions. So it really starts transitioning into essentially concepts that then push into Algebra 2 later on, okay? So that's the most exciting half of the course, if you ask me. The way things will run, so logistics, on Thursday, you'll get the next set of assignments. So you already have the slide deck and the calendar and everything for this week. Next week, you'll get a new slide deck that will have things laid out for each day. Again, this is what we've been talking about. So video conferencing sessions will happen for students who are remote. Every day it is 8 to 8:40. So tomorrow, 8 to 8:40. And then on the days that you're in school, you'll be participating asynchronously, meaning you will be doing the warm-up and the homework and maybe starting the lesson for that night while in the building. On Wednesdays, all of you will join me at 8 a.m. and we will do some lessons. And sometimes do some assessments that day. But it'll be like a regular class where we'll be able to all kind of work together. So everything that you need will be posted in Classroom. Email is the best way to get a hold of me if you have a concern. I have an office, so I'm not always going to be at the phone number you see listed at the top of this. Ideally, you start training yourself to be really professional with how you communicate to a teacher. So put your name, what the course is, and what the email is about in your topic, and it helps both myself and you find that email later on if needed. Okay. For general questions, and a lot of you did a great job with this with some of the summer homework stuff and the review stuff. If you have a general question, post it in the stream of the classroom, because chances are another student has the same question and it helps them get clarity as well. Okay, so that's fine as long as it's about the work that we're doing and not work that's graded. Okay, so the important stuff. This is some of this stuff's going to feel very different than what it feels like when you're in a middle school course, in particular the grading. So high school grades are essentially letter grades, but we're grading on a 0 to 100 scale. So there's A's, B's, C, D's, and F's. Your grade will be broken down into these categories. So 70% of your grade are tests and quizzes. Those are summative assessments. Okay, and they're like traditional paper and pencil tests. I'll be delivering them to each of your middle schools, and you'll take them during the time you're in the building on those days. So on those days, you won't have necessarily time to start a lot of the homework and stuff. You'll be taking a test or a quiz that day. 20% of your grade is homework completion and some of the in-class work. So any of the checkouts that you do. Homework is 4 points for each homework that you complete. So you'll get 4 points for each homework that you complete. And there'll be some other things maybe along the way that will fall into that category, but that's mostly homework and checkouts. 10% of your grade is watching the videos. So for every video or participation in general. So there's two kind of parts to participation. One is watching the videos. I get feedback on how long you've watched them and if you did watch them or not. 4 points go into the participation grade for each video lesson throughout the year. And you also get worker habit grades. So essentially, are you showing up to the Zoom sessions? Are you handing things in on time? Are you watching all the video lessons? So you'll get a grade 1 through 4 for each unit in terms of how your work habits work. Okay, so all of that kind of comes together and gives you a grade for Algebra 1. The way that tests and quizzes work are they're all entered in under that summative, but a quiz is entered in once and a test is entered in twice. So it just weighs more heavily in there than a quiz grade. Okay, there will be a final exam at the end of the course and you'll get some review materials at that point. So there'll be a larger exam that may be weighed a little bit differently at the end to just kind of give you an overview of the course. Basically, it's nice to kind of put everything together at the end of the year. Okay, so while we're talking about that, before I move to reassessment, yes, you will know your grade on your pretest because once PowerSchool is up and running, the first grades that you will get will be 1 quiz grade, and that will be your pre-assessment. So I'll enter your pre-assessment as your first grade in there for a summative assessment. You will also get a grade, and so this is going to be very important to some of you because some of you are missing some pieces in this. You will get a formative assessment grade for the review work that you should have been doing the time leading up to the pretest. So any of the checkouts that you completed or the ed puzzles that had embedded questions, I have kind of an overall grade for all of that work that I will put into the formative assessment category. So once PowerSchool is up and running, immediately you will see 2 grades. It'll be your pretest and your review work. For some of you, your review work is not a passing grade because you are missing some stuff. So some of the stuff you passed in may have been great, they're A's, but if those are being weighted against zeros, that really impacts that formative assessment piece, the review work leading up to. If you are missing something, then I should have emailed you yesterday with the highlighted areas of the things you are missing and instructions on how to let me know when you have it completed. And I gave you, I think I put till this Monday. Okay, so following Monday, which is October 5th. By October 5th, if there's stuff that's missing from there, that's the absolute deadline to get that stuff in, okay? And it will be part of your first grade. Summer homework packet, I didn't put in to the review work. So summer homework packet, I just marked on completion. The formative assessment grade that you'll get from review work is not a completion grade necessarily. It's a proficiency grade. So how did you do on the things you passed into me that I graded and then gave you feedback on? So any of like the Google form things you filled out. There's a checkout on fractions. There's a checkout on order of operations, checkout on distributive property, and I believe checkout on linear equations. And then there was 3 ed puzzles that had questions. So all of that stuff's in a spreadsheet kind of averaging together and giving me a proficiency grade on your work, okay? So if you didn't, there were some people who missed the summer packet, came into the district late, whatever the case may be, I'm not gonna put that 0 into the first part of your grade. I'm just doing proficiency on the review work and how did you do on the pretest. Those will be your first 2 grades, okay? Okay, so this is a section you may want to reread. If you have questions on, certainly ask it. The way that reassessment works at the high school, at least in the math department, is probably very different than possibly how reassessment works in your middle school. So we do not do retakes at the high school. So when you take a quiz, if you're not happy with your performance on that quiz, you can certainly do, and I would encourage you to, look over the quiz, do corrections, maybe go back and look at some of the former videos or homeworks. Okay, certainly all those things matter, but you won't retake that quiz. You will still have that quiz grade in there. Your opportunity to reassess happens when you take the final unit test. So when you take the final unit test, if you score higher on those proficiencies than you did originally on the quiz, that's your reassessment. And what happens is I take your quiz grade and your test grade, and it gets averaged, and your quiz grade gets replaced with the average of the 2 performances on those standards, okay? So that's how reassessment is done in the math department at the high school. There's a few kind of smaller pieces within there. So if there are several quizzes leading up to a test, you only get a grade replacement on one of those quizzes. I'm not going to change all of your quiz grades leading up to it. I will choose the one that shows the most improvement and give you that new grade. Now, this is the important piece. You only get this option if you have demonstrated strong worker habits throughout the unit. So that means pretty much all the homework is done. All the videos have been watched. You've been doing what you're supposed to do. If you take a quiz, you don't do well on it, you take another quiz, you don't do well on it, you take a test, maybe you do a little better by the time we get to the test. But if along the way you weren't doing the work, you don't get that reassessment, okay? Whatever those original quiz grades were, those stand, okay? So you have to be showing those strong worker habits throughout in order to even have that option of possibly getting a little bit of a grade boost at the end of the unit if you've demonstrated higher proficiency. On the unit test, when the unit ends and we take that final summative test for the unit, there's no reassessment test. That's the end of the unit, okay? So you get the grade you get on that test. Okay, so that's very different than probably how a middle school course is run, I'm assuming. Okay, and so underneath that it says learning habits. So again, you'll get a 1, 2, 3, 4 under the participation for your learning habits for that unit. If you have below a 3 on your learning habits, you do not get the option to get a reassessment grade or get an adjustment to your original quiz grade. Okay. Also with grading, it's really important, especially in this course where it's a remote course, it's going to move very quickly. It's going to be a challenge probably for many of you to stay on top of the work. Okay, I know that and I'm anticipating. So I really, really encourage you not to get behind. Along with that, I'll accept homeworks until the end of the unit. So when unit 1 ends, I will not take any more unit 1 homeworks that are missing, okay? But if you submit the homework after I post the answer key for the next day, so essentially if you have homework that's due that you're supposed to do on Thursday, by Friday, that key will be posted, okay? So if you don't do the work the day it's supposed to be done, then you'll get credit for that homework, but it'll be a reduced homework grade. Okay, so you can no longer get a 4 out of 4 on that homework. You can get a 3 out of 4. And if it's 2 days after, you can get a 2 out of 4. And if it's, really late, then you'll get a 1 out of 4 for that homework. Okay, and that's assuming the homework's totally done. Like if you give me a homework 3 days late and it's half done, I'm probably not going to give you credit for that. Okay, so that's really important that you stay on top of the work that's due each day and that it's in Google Classroom the day it's supposed to be in Google Classroom. Okay, at the end of each unit, I'm going to kind of give you a chance and give myself a chance to reevaluate if Algebra 1 this year is the right decision for you. So what's important is that most important is that you're maintaining good standing in 8th grade math. Okay, your job this year as an 8th grade student is to be ready for high school. And so part of that is mastering 8th grade math standards. Okay, so that's part 1. If we're struggling in 8th grade math, then we need to hold off on algebra until we can get that straightened out, okay? We also need to have good standing in Algebra 1, which is basically a B- or higher. Pretty consistently. Obviously, if you kind of dip down to like a C+ for a few weeks, and come back up, that's different. But if we're really seeing that that your achievement on all of these proficiencies are kind of more in a C/D range, then that's okay. Algebra 1 this year is an extension from where you're supposed to be at. And I certainly don't want anybody to feel like they are struggling through this entire year when it would totally be appropriate to take Algebra 1 next year or focus on 8th grade math and enter next year taking the second half of Algebra 1. Okay, so in terms of how this course will work, there's always time to reevaluate and make a decision on if a high school course, this is a high school course, if it makes more sense to take it once you get to high school next year, okay? And you can make that decision too, okay? So if you're like next week, you're going, wow, this class is a lot of work, and wow, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm really struggling to complete the homeworks, and I'm really struggling with even just the pace and the expectations in the course, then you email me and you let me know, and we'll have that discussion. And we can have that discussion with your 8th grade math teacher. I mean, at any point, especially, I know I'm anticipating that this is going to hit a few of you kind of hard, like in terms of the pace and the expectations of this course. And I'm anticipating that it just won't be the right fit this year for some of us because it's remote and it's a little wonky because it's remote and it makes it a little more challenging. And that's okay. And so be honest with yourself and how you feel about things when you're working through the first few weeks. And let me know if you're feeling that way, because we can maybe talk about, different ways to organize your time, or maybe it's just not the right thing this year. Okay, so just keep that in mind that don't feel pressure to try to keep up. If you feel like you're drowning, let me know, okay? So that's the important stuff with the grading and my expectations for you. And I think that's really, we're over by 4 minutes at this point. That's fine. I'm okay staying over. I see somebody asked about Algebra 2. Algebra 2 is not a requirement. The typical student would take Algebra 1, geometry, then Algebra 2, then pre-calc, and then from there. So you don't have to take any necessarily order or type of course at the high school, but you have to have 3 math credits at the high school. And so this year, given that this is a high school course, if you continue with algebra, this will be on your high school transcript as a credit of math for Algebra 1. Okay, so that's also important to know. If you decide it's not for you, in November, it won't stick with you and ruin your high school transcript. It'll just get overwritten when you take Algebra 1 as a 9th grader, so don't worry about that. Good question on the midterms. Honestly, I don't think we're gonna do midterm. There's no plan at the high school to have scheduled midterms this year. So I haven't planned to do a midterm. We may, wherever we land kind of at the end of the semester, the last test I give you may have kind of some, you know, some little things from earlier on. But honestly, the first semester is pretty sequential anyway. So like what we're doing at the last test kind of builds on the stuff from before anyway. So I don't really plan on calling it a midterm in any way, but I do plan on giving you a final. And that is a little more challenging because again, the first half is linear. And then in the second half, we start doing some, you know, quadratics and some exponential functions. And so it's kind of a bigger set of work to look at. Okay, so that covers what I need to cover with you today. Again, you all need to be in Google Classroom, open up the slide deck. I'll go back to here. We've gone over the course expectations. You should look back through them again. And then there's a form to fill out saying that you have read them, you understand the grading, you understand the expectations for late work. Yep, so that's what we're talking about right now. So what our work is for today, you're gonna go in, accept a Google Classroom invite, look back over these course expectations, sign this form. Then you're going to watch the first video lesson and you're going to complete notes number 1. So for those of you who got started with things that one day, there was a glitch one day and some of you started some of that work. If you have notes number 1 completed, you may want to reprint just that set. Obviously, you don't want to print that whole huge packet out necessarily, but you may want to reprint notes number 1 to follow along with me. The way that I set up the ed puzzles would be the way that like a typical math class would run at the high school in terms of like, I hope that you take the opportunity to interact with the notes the way that I set it up. So like, I'm going to do a few examples, then the video will stop and say, you do the next 2, and then continue the video so that you get like, here's some examples, your turn. Okay, these are the answers. Here's the next piece of information. I'll try it. Now you try it. And then the answer will show up. Okay, so I feel like it's really cheating yourself if you skip the opportunity to try it and then continue with the notes. So try to interact with the video in that way so it feels more like a class and you'll get more out of it. Sometimes I don't put a specific time in. Work wouldn't necessarily be due by 3 p.m. because you may be doing something else during that school day. So certainly there'll be quizzes and tests that will cause you to maybe have to do that homework that night. It would be due, I guess, to answer Addison's question by the next day. So when I go in and check it the next day, that's when it should be in there. Will Zoom ever go past 9?
If
No.
you have a class while algebra is going on,
So you're
will
only
we go to algebra or the other class?
like on Wednesdays, you mean? Every Wednesday, yeah. So it shouldn't. I know we're running a little late today. Normally, it should only go to like 8:40. If we have to go to 9, I'll go to 9. But I have a class at 9 as well. So I won't be able to go past 9 on Wednesdays. So you'll be fine to go to your team meeting. Yeah, so the purpose of the Zoom meetings, in terms of me teaching you things, yes, you will have already taken the notes, but in the Zoom meeting, I can kind of reteach those skills when we're going through like the warm up and the homework. It allows me to kind of reteach some of those proficiencies, and it's your opportunity to ask questions. So when you come into a Zoom meeting, tomorrow's a little weird because we haven't had homework yet, but on Friday you come in, you've done some work. You should come in with like a list of questions you want to talk about, and I will go through those and reteach what that means. Okay. That's something I have emailed the Remote Academy about, and I'm not sure. I hope that you will just be able to go to algebra class, at least. So again, remote kids, I have you on the B cohort, so that will be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that you'll be Zooming in if you're remote. I haven't heard back from the Remote Academy, but I would think you'll be able to go to algebra. I don't know what the other class is that's happening, so that's still kind of in discussion right now. So where do we find the slideshow? So it should be posted in Google Classroom for you right now. And the other thing that should have posted while we're in this meeting is that first video that you need for today. Okay, and again, don't get ahead of yourself. So tomorrow, so I'm on the slide for today. Tomorrow, you'll go in and what you did in that video today will be part of that warm up. And then you'll have homework to practice for that video tomorrow at school or tomorrow with me. Okay. So Addison, Algebra 2 is not required. 3 math credits are required. No, I archived the review. So somebody asked, do we need to keep the review class? No, that has every single student who possibly wanted to be in Algebra 1. You don't need to stay in that class. I archived it this morning, so I don't even think you have access to the materials, but I could be wrong. But you can just get rid of that class from your main screen in Google Classroom. Okay. Any other questions before? And if you think of a question later when you're thinking through the grading and the way the class will run, let me know. Just send me an email. You'll notice in the slide decks, like things are highlighted. That's for me to remember what I need to put in that day of. So don't worry too much about any of the highlighted pieces. That's me communicating to myself what needs to get done. Just so you know, kind of first grading things that are coming in would be the homework tomorrow. You would submit homework number 1 tomorrow, and Friday you'd submit homework number 2. I will tell you that Friday's lesson with fractions and decimals in equations and Friday's homework, and that's why I asked you to start it early and just try the evens, is going to be challenging for probably the majority of you. So just kind of know that I know that's a challenging lesson, and who will be in that Zoom? Be in remote when you come on Monday, certainly come with questions. And the A group, if you have questions on that fractions homework, watch the video from those sessions since I won't see you again until Wednesday. Yes, I will put this video on today's slide after it downloads. Okay, so somebody asked, will this video be in Classroom? Yes, it'll be in there probably by 9:30, 10. Any other questions before I head out to a geometry class? I don't see the slide deck. So if you don't see the slide deck, you're possibly in the wrong. Make sure you're in the Algebra 1 8th grade and not the Algebra 1 review. No, your homework today is to watch the notes. It's a longer video, so I think it's about a half hour. Okay, well, I am going to let you go. And again, email me if you have questions when you look through this stuff later on. Okay. Make sure you, last piece, make sure you fill out I'll put it in here one more time. If you haven't already, make sure you're accounted for in attendance. Oops, I only sent it to Alexa. Okay, so there's the Google form for attendance. I'll leave that up for 30 seconds for you to click on if you haven't gone in for attendance. Otherwise, you're all set to go.